I realized that I was doing my team such a disservice
Mm,
those 2.5 months by setting a lower bar than what we were actually capable of,
mhm,
because I was worried that I was going to scare them too much, maybe, into trying to go after this thing. And what happens if we fail? What happens if we don't reach that number?
mm,
And so for me, there was a really big shift when I realized that it was actually my job to make sure that we continue to challenge ourselves and make sure that we're never settling. We're always just slightly outside our comfort zone,
yeah,
because most people are motivated by that.
mm.
And so I could never dream small anymore. It's important that for the sake of the entire team that I'm making sure that we're dreaming big enough for all of us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My name is Joao Camargo, and my guest here today is Paulina Riedler, who is the CEO and co-founder of Spakinect. Paulina, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really, really excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, why don't we start off with the same method that I start with every single one of these conversations with? It's just letting the guests tell everyone a little bit more about the company, a little bit more about who they are, who they help, and any context that they'd like to share for anyone that's listening in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Spakinect. So what we do is we offer pre-treatment evaluations for patients who are going in for elective cosmetic procedures. So we're talking about Botox, skin rejuvenation, laser hair removal, things that are all elective cash pay treatments. Our
Mhm.
providers make sure that they're a good candidate for treatment before they come into the med spa to have that treatment.
That's awesome. One, I would like to share this. I had no idea that there was that pre treat pre call. Sorry, what was the term you used there? My apologies.
Pre-treatment consultation.
The pre treatment consultation. I had no idea that that was a thing. I thought it was just people booking in. And it's like, yep, okay, go ahead, go for it.
Mhm.
But tell me a little bit more. I wanted to ask about a little bit more on the importance of that. So we'll get to that. But why don't we just take one step back, and tell me what was the decision on creating the business? How did that even spark in the first place?
Yeah. Well, it all started really around there's a big Botox party boom about 15 years ago in the United States, where medical aesthetics was really starting to become more popular. And what happened was a nurse actually was arrested for administering Botox without any physician oversight.
Mm,
And at the time, I was an aspiring nurse. I was just about to start nursing school. And I was sitting around the breakfast table with my husband, and we actually picked up a copy of the Ventura County Star, which was a local newspaper.
mhm,
And we saw this story about a nurse being arrested, and we thought, this just can't be, because I could never imagine getting arrested on criminal charges as a nurse doing Botox. So as we investigated a little more, we found out that actually this was becoming more of an issue, especially at that time in California,
mm,
because a lot of nurses were very skilled in doing Botox, but actually it was outside of their scope to prescribe that Botox to a patient without having an order come from a
mm,
nurse practitioner or from a physician. So my husband was doing telehealth for a different industry, and we saw that there was a need here, a problem that we could solve with telehealth. So we just pivoted. We started with one test case, and now we've grown to doing over 13,000 exams monthly across the
wow.
United States.
Awesome. That's really, really cool. Thank you for sharing that story as well. And I think that also ties in into the importance of that, right? Because even though you can be highly skilled at a certain field or a certain competence in what you do, that sometimes might not be the best practice. So tell me and everyone a little bit more as well about the importance of having that pre-screen and that consultation, that conversation with the patient before they do any sort of treatment.
Yeah. Yeah. So in healthcare, there's different scopes for different folks, right?
Mm,
So there's RNs, which I'm actually an RN myself. That means I can carry out orders. I can do a lot of complicated treatments and procedures so long as I'm working underneath the delegation and supervision
mhm,
of somebody who has more authority than me, usually a nurse practitioner or a physician. Now, when it comes to prescribing, that is outside of my scope as
mhm,
an RN. So, with Botox and other elective cosmetic procedures, those are actually medical treatments, even though sometimes people see it as maybe not so much medical,
mhm.
but it really is a medical treatment. So,
Mhm.
getting something injected into your face like Botox definitely is considered a prescription in the eyes of the medical board and the nursing board.
Mhm.
So you need to make sure that you get that prescribed from somebody who is able to prescribe. And the reason that's so important is just like with any medication, you need to make sure that it's the right fit for you, that you don't have any what we call contraindications. So we want to make sure you don't have any health conditions or any previous medical history
Mhm.
that would make it not a good use case for you, not a good fit for you. So it all comes back to patient safety. It's
Mm.
really just making sure that this procedure or treatment that you're about to get is safe for you, and that has to come from somebody with prescriptive authority
Mm.
in their field. So we're talking about physician assistant, nurse practitioner, or a medical doctor.
That's interesting, and it's kind of giving me some memories now of going to the dermatologist and seeing so many different. I'm not sure if signs is the right word, but pieces of information of like, hey, if this is a procedure that you want to partake in, this is something that we can help you with. But then there's the physicians themselves there, everyone that's actually qualified to do that, as opposed to my initial presupposition that hey, people that just want to do it, they just walk in and like, okay, let's get it done, let's book the day. But that doesn't seem to be the case. Which one, I'm thankful I was wrong, and two, it's great to understand that there's that level of safety there because at the end of the day, so many people, and I'm not sure if you agree with this, there's so many people that want to have certain kinds of procedures, thinking it's just going to better their lives, but there can be some very harmful consequences if they are not looked after it in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is really what has sparked my interest in not only getting in this industry, but staying in this industry for the last 13 years, is that it is an avenue of medicine that until recently was not regulated really well whatsoever across different states. Now in the United States, we have 50 states that all have 50 different medical boards and nursing boards and regulations. But what we've noticed is that the medical aesthetics industry has boomed. It has actually tripled, almost quadrupled now from the time that we started the company.
Mm.
And we're seeing a continued rise in medical aesthetics, med spas opening, nurses wanting to start their own practices in medical aesthetics. It's a very lucrative industry. And therefore, there are people who are coming in who are not necessarily going to be trained appropriately, but they're wanting to capitalize on this growing industry and the market that they see. And so for that reason, we felt like it's really important to continue to do the best that we can to try to standardize care
Hmm.
across the industry and make sure that we are continuing to push patient safety because unfortunately it only takes a couple of bad actors to really, put a bad name to the
Hmm.
industry. We have seen that. We have seen a few people who do not operate up to the level of standard that they should,
Hmm.
and then unfortunately gives the whole industry a bad name. So what we're trying to do is keep everybody accountable and make sure that as a patient, when you go in to have a treatment at a med spa, that you know what you should be looking for, that you
Mm.
know what is safe, what is not safe, and that we're protecting as best as possible the
Mm.
patient that we're going in.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And in one way, it's like there's many people or many new coming entrepreneurs who are aspiring to have these goals and help these people. As you said, it's a booming industry, but it almost sounds like they can get to a certain point where they just see themselves starting something, and then there's this. I wouldn't say it's a skill gap, maybe a knowledge gap on what's needed there, on the procedures that are necessary. And I guess that's also where the opportunity comes in for you guys as a business, where they start to look for a lot of this information and look for a lot of this help in something that they don't have too much um, knowledge in. So then they seek something like Spakinect to be able to have that confidence in the screening for those conversations, for those procedures to go as smoothly as possible. Does that sound all about right?
That's absolutely right. I would say that there's a lot of people who do come in the industry. We're talking about private equity,
Mm-hmm.
people who are trying to make money, which is fine. But the problem that we see a lot in other avenues of healthcare that have become more sort of commoditized
Mm.
is that you can sacrifice patient safety very quickly when you're coming in and just trying to cut costs and increase profit as much as possible. And
Mm-hmm.
when that directive is coming from people who don't have a clinical background or clinical expertise in this particular
Hmm.
area of medicine, it can be dangerous. And so we've
Hmm.
made it our mission that we are here to, again, continue to provide patient safety, and not only just for patients, but for providers as well. Because there are a lot of, like I said, very skilled, very talented nurses that do not have the ability to prescribe in their scope, but they have the ability to inject, and they are very, very skilled at that.
Hmm.
So we wanna make sure that we're promoting, their businesses, making sure that they can continue to operate their own businesses safely. And so we're sort of bridging that gap between giving peace of mind to healthcare providers and to patients. That's Spot
Mm,
Connect.
interesting. Is there any form of hesitancy, or I guess some challenges when you're having those conversations with the practitioners, maybe the med spa owners, in trying to educate them on the importance of what you guys are doing? When sometimes they might not understand it, or sometimes they do understand it, they just don't see the I guess a direct ROI on it because they are so focused on the revenue side of things. What are some of the challenges when it comes to that process?
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting question. I will say that a lot of providers who maybe are a little bit hesitant about using a service like Spot Connect, it really comes down to, like you said, ROI. I'm going to invest now and I'm going to pay this company to do these exams for my patient. What do I get out of it? So, what we always say is one, you get the peace of mind. And two, the cost that you would pay us per patient is going to be pennies on the dollar to what it would cost you if you were investigated by a medical board or a nursing
Mm,
board. Unfortunately, that's not only costly for your time, your license, but it also gives you a bad reputation potentially. So you want to make sure that you're putting up the cost up front to operate in a compliant way from the beginning.
mhm,
Nursing board and medical board investigations can cost anywhere between 10 to 20 to $30,000 depending on how intense they have to be. So
mhm.
we definitely wanna avoid that if we can, and the cost that you pay Spa Connect per exam is, again, pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's always great to understand the ROI because I think at the end of the day, as much as people want to have the impact for their business and things that they're trying to create, it is a business. And if the business doesn't make money, then the impact that can't happen in the first place. So being able to balance that, it's awesome. And it's great that you guys are portraying that when you're having those conversations too. And I'm wondering if during those talks, as you're kind of trying to educate them on the process, share everything that you just shared with me, there's still those things that make it difficult for the business to find a lot more of these opportunities now. Just looking at I guess a growth sense for Spot Connect on finding a lot more of these practitioners, a lot of these med spas who are looking for the efficiency that you guys are able to bring them. Is there any obstacles along the way in achieving more of that growth for Spot Connect as well?
For Spa Connect?
Yes.
I mean, how do you mean?
Yeah. So just shifting even the lens of the I guess the lens of the question now, even from an efficiency standpoint to more of a growth in how you're thinking about the vision of Spot Connect coming through. So as you are trying to, of course, educate a lot more of the market on the importance of what you guys are doing, are there any obstacles, any hurdles along the way when trying to make that happen to make sure that yes, you are able to achieve the impact and help a lot of these companies, but grow as a business as a result of that as well?
Oh, sure. So the biggest thing I will say is that legislation always gets in the way.
Okay.
So we operate in 33 states right now. We will be in 50 states by the end of 2026. That means that we have 50 different boards and 50 different regulating bodies that we have to abide by their rules, and they're all
Mm,
slightly different. None of them are exactly the same. So, what ends up happening and what creates barriers for us to growth is when certain states decide to take a little bit more of a stronger stance than others,
mm,
and particularly around telehealth. Now, we know since COVID, the rise of telehealth, the people's comfort level with telehealth has increased. Most people now are doing some kind of visit via telehealth,
mhm,
whether it's the other primary provider or urgent care or teledoc or whatever. So we have seen this rise in comfort, which has been really great for Spa Connect. However, there are some states that have not stayed up to speed with their written legislation
mm,
and rules from these agencies. And so there is a little bit of
mm,
a a concern for us when it comes to facing certain states that are trying to now restrict telehealth,
Mm,
specifically around medical aesthetics. So that's been our sort of call to action over the last several months, actually, is getting a lot more involved with lobbying
mhm.
and getting involved with state legislators to educate them on the industry and make sure that telehealth is not going to be compromised and it's not going to be prevented from use in this certain aspect of medicine.
Interesting. So it's more so, just want to make sure I understand that correctly. It's more so on the state level and having that
Mhm.
that be, I'll call it approved just for simplistic terms here, having the procedures be approved in the right way, as opposed to like a client level where that becomes a conflict, because if the state hasn't quote unquote approved it yet, then you can't even go to the client level in the
Correct.
first place.
Correct. That's
Oh,
correct.
very, very
Yeah.
interesting. Huh.
Yeah, so the sort of fight has turned now for Spa Connect to, uh, focus a lot more on lobbying, and
Hmm.
we were actually very heavily involved in Texas in this most recent legislative session in shaping one law called HB 3749. What HB 3749 did was it regulated how elective IV therapy was able to be administered, and that was really, really important for us because number one, the majority of our clients in Texas perform elective IV therapy.
Hmm.
Number two, there was a very tragic, unfortunate event a few years ago where a patient passed away in Texas from an elective IV. It was given to her by somebody who never should have been giving her the IV, and they never had a good faith exam, and they never got an order from a physician or a
Mm,
mid level. So, unfortunately, this is what I was talking about earlier, where there are some bad actors in the industry. There are things that end up happening that put a bad name to the industry. And what we're trying to do is make sure that when states come out and want to create regulations to protect patients and their
mhm.
constituents, that it actually makes sense because a
Yeah.
lot of these lawmakers don't fully understand the industry. They're just trying to protect their constituents and do right by them, which is their job.
Mhm.
So we really started to take a stronger stance and come in and try to educate and try to be involved, and that's what we did in Texas. So we were very successful there and very proud of that, and that's really carried on to a few other states that we're working with right now and making sure that people continue to have access to care, that people understand that telehealth is actually a very safe and very effective way to provide care and that they don't have to be afraid of it. And in fact, had this patient in Texas received a good faith exam via telehealth, we
Mhm.
believe that could have saved her life.
Yeah.
So that's been our mission is making sure that states understand that because again, at a high level, once the states are allowing telehealth for medical aesthetics, then Spocknet can come in and then offer that as a service.
Mhm.
And then there's a whole bunch of other things, we can talk about in terms of growing the business and other roadblocks that can come up. But from a high level, we can't sell into a
Mhm.
state until we're
Yeah.
allowed.
That's the first step. That's the first step. Interesting. Very, thank you for sharing that. It's very, very insightful. I wanted to ask a question as well, Paulina. That's been a question that I've asked almost everyone on the podcast. Um, It is this. Let's say you had a magic wand and you could just wave this amazing phenomenal wand to say to solve one challenge in the business. I'll actually move this state legislation one apart just because we've been digging into it. So if that was going to be your answer, well, don't make it your answer. That's but let's say you had this one and you could solve one challenge, one obstacle that would allow you to hit the impact goals that you want. Of course, the client acquisition, the revenue targets, all those things for the growth of the company. I think so many times as entrepreneurs, there are a million priorities that we want to focus on and fires to put out. But you wave this wand, just one thing gets solved that would allow you all your goals to be hit. What's that one thing you would like to solve?
I think it would be around getting our clients and potential clients to understand the potential ROI of implementing Spa Connect. We
Hmm.
talked about the patient safety aspect of it and
Hmm. Uh-huh.
the safety of the license holder. What we didn't talk about is that if you have somebody in your practice who is already doing good faith exams, that is the number one competition for us as a company. Is if a med spa already has a physician and they have a nurse practitioner and they're like, you know what, we're already doing these good faith exams. When the patient comes in, we don't need to use this telehealth third party service. But what a lot of practices don't realize is that if you multiply the amount of time that that medical
Mm,
provider is doing a good faith exam, and then you put that time back with a patient in a chair doing billable treatments, you will often see a 4 to 5x return on revenue because the average injector is making somewhere between 500 to $1,000 an hour in revenue for a practice. So
mm,
if you say, okay, 2 or 3 hours a week, we're doing good faith exams, that's not generating any revenue for the practice,
mm,
right?
yeah,
But if you put that time back with patients and you pay Spakinect to do those good faith exams, then you're able to generate more revenue for the practice. We do have this conversation a lot. Some practices understand that, but some people are a little bit more focused on just dollar for dollar costs,
mhm,
and they
mhm,
don't understand the concept that actually paying for this service can help you to increase revenue on the other side.
mm,
So I would say if I could solve, anything, it would be to open up people's eyes to thinking about their businesses from a higher level and
yeah.
understand how actually using this service can help them to increase
Yeah,
revenue.
that's so insightful as well because I think oftentimes it can be like, yeah, but I'm doing this thing for free right now, so why would I pay for it? It's like,
Right.
exactly. Well, if you pay for it, you'll actually make more from it. So it's just
Yeah,
having like putting those puzzle pieces together. It's actually really insightful, and I think
yeah,
to some degree, I'll put myself in this category as well. Even some certain software tools, I'm like, oh, I can do this thing right here, or I can get someone else from my team to do it. But if I just hired someone externally, it can make that difference because, as you said, I think we underestimate how valuable our time is, and
yes,
being able to use it in the most effective, high leverage activity can create such a huge amount of output for the input.
yes.
So wow, that thank you for sharing that. That's really awesome. I'm surprised I haven't heard that from more people in the podcast when I've asked that question. So I really really like that one. And I have one
Yeah.
final. Sorry, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I was just say there's a book called Buy Back Your Time.
Oh yes.
I highly recommend it if anybody is running their own business. It's been very insightful for me. It's probably things that you already conceptually know, but Dan
Dan
Martell is the
Martell.
author.
Yeah,
He
that's right.
really delivers it in a way that makes it very eye opening. So you figure
Yeah,
out what your buyback number is. I think is what he calls it, right? And anything that's below that, you hire out for.
yeah.
And it is a hard concept to take on when you're just starting a business. So you do need to get to a certain point, right, where you have some revenue coming in. But once you do, I think it unlocks so many doors. And that's exactly what I'm talking about is that people get very fearful around, paying
Mhm,
for something
mhm,
that they feel like they're doing right now for free because
mhm.
they don't understand that they can actually generate more revenue.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it, funnily enough, I actually had a CEO of Dan Martell's company on the podcast as well. Well, Dan now has SaaS Academy, so I had Johnny
Mhm.
Page, the CEO, on the podcast. One of my mentors actually gets mentorship from Dan Martell, so I'm a huge advocate for him and his books as well. So it's great that you brought it up. And then I have one final question here for you, Paulina. And this question is actually not from me; it's a question from our last guest to you, and they had no idea who you were at all. So here it is. You ready for it?
Sure.
The question is, what is the most difficult personal change you had to make in your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh. Um, okay, so I know exactly what this is. So when you become a leader and you realize that you're in charge of leading this team of people that are showing up every day to work for you, for your vision, there is a level of pressure there that you can't really understand until you're sitting in that seat. And the biggest change for me was realizing that if I didn't dream big enough for my team, that I was actually doing them a disservice.
Hmm.
So last last year I actually had this realization when we did our annual planning and we set our goals for the year, and I had this number in my head for what I wanted our annual revenue to be,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't think that we were able to hit that number.
Okay.
So I shot low. We set a lower number,
Hmm.
and within 2.5 months, we were already exceeding our targets so far that we had to go back and we had to reproject and now project onto the actual number that I had in mind. And what that did for me, I will tell you, I lost so much sleep after that because I realized that I was doing my team such a disservice
Hmm.
those 2.5 months by setting a lower bar than what we were actually capable of
Mhm.
because I was worried that I was going to scare them too much, maybe, into trying to go after this thing. And what happens if we fail? What happens if we don't reach that number?
Mm.
And so for me, there was a really big shift when I realized that it was actually my job to make sure that we continued to challenge ourselves and make sure that we're never settling. We're always just slightly outside our comfort zone
Yeah.
because most people are motivated by that.
Hmm.
And so I could never dream small anymore. It's important that for the sake of the entire team that I'm making sure that we're dreaming big enough for all of
Well,
us.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. It's really, really insightful. It's great to hear too because you hear from so many entrepreneurs too. I can't remember exactly from names, but like projects and things that are goals that are set. It's like, hey, let's do this. The team is like, hey, let's do this in 6 months, 12 months, and then the leader comes in and is like, yeah, actually, let's do this in this week. Let's get it done by this week. And everybody's like,
Oh,
whoa, what? And
yeah.
they end up getting it done. It's just a matter of like thinking big and driving things as you aspire them,
Mhm.
as opposed to just what's the word I want to use here, as opposed to just being a victim of circumstances. Like, yeah, falling to the bottom. So I really, really love that answer, Paulina. Thank you so much for your time. This has been such an incredible conversation. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you, and of course, also a little bit more about Spakinect?
Yeah, so you can find us on Instagram, you can find me on LinkedIn, Paulina Riedler, but our Instagram and our website, the best place to find us and get in touch with one of our experts.
Amazing. I will leave everything down below here in the description if you're hearing this and you want to check that out. And if you enjoyed this conversation, you want to hear more conversations like this, please hit the subscribe button and I will see you on the next episode. Paulina, thank you so much again.
Thank you.